Beep. The sound echoed through Walmart like a gunshot. David Langston, worth $12 billion according to Forbes, stood frozen as the cashier's voice cut through the bustling store. "Sir, your card has been declined." Time stopped. Conversations halted mid-sentence. Heads turned like dominoes falling in slow motion. Phone cameras emerged from pockets like weapons drawn at high noon. Have you ever felt the earth crack beneath your feet? That moment when your entire world tilts sideways and you're falling through empty space with nothing to grab onto. That's what power feels like when it abandons you. David's throat went desert dry. His Armani suit suddenly felt like costume fabric. The Rolex on his wrist, worth more than most people's houses, now felt heavy as chains. "Try it again," he whispered, his voice barely audible above the store's fluorescent hum. Beep. Declined. A teenager with blue hair snickered behind him. A mother pulled her children closer, as if bankruptcy might be contagious. An elderly man shook his head with the satisfaction of someone watching karma finally catch up. But David wasn't looking at them. His eyes had found something else entirely. At the very back of the line, so far away she might have been invisible, stood a little black girl. 8 years old, maybe 9. Barefoot on the cold linoleum floor. Her clothes hung loose on her tiny frame like hand-me-downs from someone twice her size. In her arms, she clutched a baby. Her brother, David would later learn. The child couldn't have been more than 18 months old, sleeping peacefully against her shoulder while she held a single carton of milk in her free hand. $1 bill crumpled in her small fist. That's all she had. $1 for one carton of milk for one hungry baby brother. And suddenly, David's declined credit card felt like the least important thing in the universe. "Sir." The cashier's impatient voice snapped him back to reality. "Do you have another form of payment?" The question hung in the air like smoke. Behind him, the line stretched longer. Phones recorded. Whispers spread. Social media posts were being typed in real time. Billionaire can't afford groceries. David Langston broke. Watch, richest man in America humiliated at Walmart checkout. But David wasn't thinking about his reputation anymore. He was thinking about that little girl. About the way she held her brother like he was made of glass. About the careful way she gripped that single dollar like it contained all the hope in the world. What happens when two different kinds of desperation meet in the same checkout line? Backhand index pointing right, hit subscribe, because what happens next will restore your faith in humanity. Is that really him? No way. David Langston shops at Walmart. His card got declined. How is that even possible? The whispers spread like wildfire through the store. David felt every stare like pins and needles across his skin. A woman in line 3 pointed her phone directly at his face, live streaming his humiliation to her 47 followers. But the girl, Amara, though he didn't know her name yet, she wasn't staring. She wasn't recording. She was just waiting. Patient as an angel while chaos swirled around her. The baby stirred in her arms. A soft whimper escaped his lips. "Shoo, Marcus," she whispered, bouncing him gently. "We're almost done." Marcus. The baby had a name. Of course he did. David felt something twist in his chest, a feeling he hadn't experienced in decades. When was the last time he'd thought of poor people as people? With names and dreams and fears just like his own. "Sir, I'm going to need you to step aside," the cashier said, her patience wearing thin. "There are other customers waiting." Other customers. Like the girl with $1 and a mountain of love for her baby brother. David's shopping cart sat abandoned beside him. Organic steaks. Premium wine. Artisanal cheese. Luxury items that cost more than most families spent on groceries in a month. He looked at his cart. Then at Amara's single carton of milk. The contrast felt obscene. Maybe his billions are all fake, someone laughed behind him. Probably laundering money through shell companies. Rich people problems, am I right? But David wasn't listening to the crowd anymore. He was watching the girl's face as she noticed the baby getting fussier. The way she started humming, a lullaby so soft it was barely audible above the store's chaos. That's when David realized something that would change his life forever. This wasn't about his money. This wasn't about his reputation. This wasn't even about his failed credit card. This was about what happens when privilege meets purity. And he was about to learn which one was stronger. Amara Johnson had learned responsibility before she learned to read. At 8 years old, she could change a diaper faster than most teenagers could text. She knew which generic brand stretched the furthest when food stamps ran low. She understood that crying didn't bring daddy back or make mommy's cough go away. But she also knew something else: love doesn't cost money. Standing in that checkout line, holding Marcus against her chest, she felt the weight of adult stares and judgment. The phones pointed at the man in the expensive suit didn't escape her notice. But what struck her most wasn't the spectacle, it was the look on the man's face. He looked lost. Amara had seen that expression before. In the mirror, sometimes, late at night when Marcus cried and she didn't know how to help him. When the electricity got shut off again. When there wasn't enough food to go around. The rich man looked exactly like she felt when the world got too big and too hard and too unfair. Next, the cashier called. Amara stepped forward, her bare feet silent on the cold floor. She placed the milk carton on the conveyor belt with the reverence of someone making an offering at church. "That'll be $3.49, the cashier said without looking up. Amara's heart sank. She'd counted wrong. The milk cost more than her dollar. Way more. She looked at Marcus, sleeping peacefully in her arms, unaware that his sister had failed him. Unaware that they'd be walking home empty-handed tonight. Amara's voice came out as a whisper. "I thought it was $1. The cashier finally looked up, saw the child, saw the baby, saw the single crumpled bill. Her expression softened slightly, but rules were rules. "I'm sorry, honey. Do you have more money?" Amara shook her head, tears forming in her eyes. That's when she heard it, a voice from behind her, cutting through the crowd's whispers. "Wait." David's voice surprised even himself. He hadn't planned to speak. Hadn't intended to get involved. But watching this child realize she couldn't afford to feed her baby brother felt like watching his own soul crack open. "Wait," he said again, louder this time. Your card doesn't work either," someone shouted from the back of the line. Laughter rippled through the crowd. David's face burned. But Amara had turned around, looking at him with eyes that held no judgment. No mockery. Just curiosity. She was studying his face the way children study butterflies, with wonder instead of fear. "Are you okay, mister?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The question hit David like a physical blow. When was the last time someone had asked him that? When was the last time anyone had seen past his net worth to notice he might be struggling? His board members wanted his strategies. His employees wanted his approval. His wife, before she left, had wanted his credit cards. But this child, this 8-year-old girl holding a baby and clutching $1 she couldn't spend, was asking if he was okay. David's voice cracked. "My card isn't working." Amara nodded seriously, as if this was a perfectly normal problem that happened to everyone. "That's scary," she said. "When you can't buy what you need, it feels like the world is ending." She knew. This child knew exactly what he was feeling, because she lived it every day. The crowd had gone quiet, straining to hear their conversation. Phones continued recording, but the energy had shifted. This wasn't just about a billionaire's embarrassment anymore. This was about two human beings, separated by billions of dollars and decades of life experience, finding common ground in the most unexpected place. What are you going to do? Amara asked, genuine concern in her voice. David looked at her. Really looked. Saw the way she held her brother like he was precious cargo. Saw the hole in her shirt and the dirt on her feet. Saw the strength it took to stand there with dignity while the world watched. And for the first time in years, he told the complete truth. I don't know. Beep. 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 David tried his card 3 more times. Each electronic rejection felt like a public flogging. The machine didn't care about his penthouse apartment or his private jet or his Harvard MBA. Machines don't lie. They don't flatter. They don't care about reputation or legacy or the $12 billion sitting in frozen accounts thanks to an FBI investigation he couldn't discuss. They just tell the truth, insufficient funds. This is ridiculous, muttered a man behind him. Some of us have places to be. Maybe if he shopped somewhere classier, added his wife with a sneer. But Amara wasn't sneering. She was watching David's hands shake as he fumbled with his wallet, searching for another card. Any card. Sometimes the machines get confused, she said softly, just to him. Mum's food stamp card does that sometimes. The cashier ladies have to call someone to fix it. Her gentle understanding made David's throat tighten. This child was trying to comfort him. This little girl who had every reason to be bitter about unfairness and broken systems was offering him grace. He found another card, his backup American Express. The one he kept for emergencies. Beep. Declined. The crowd stirred restlessly. Someone started a slow clap. Another person shouted, "This is what happens when you don't pay your taxes." David's vision blurred. Not from tears, he hadn't cried in 20 years, but from the sudden realization that his entire identity was collapsing in real time. Without money, who was he? Without power, what was he worth? The baby in Amara's arms made a soft sound, and she immediately started that gentle swaying motion again. So natural. So instinctive. She was 8 years old and already knew how to care for someone more vulnerable than herself. David had 50,000 employees and couldn't remember the last time he'd asked about their families. "Sir." The cashier's voice had gone from impatient to sympathetic. "Do you need to call your bank?" But David was staring at Amara, watching her quiet strength, her unconscious grace. And that's when everything changed. What happened next would be replayed millions of times across social media. It would spark debates, inspire movements, and change 2 lives forever. Amara stepped forward. Not toward the cashier. Toward David. Her bare feet made soft sounds on the linoleum as she approached this man whose problems seemed so different from hers, but whose pain looked exactly the same. "Mister," she said, her voice cutting through the crowd's murmur. David looked down at her. Up close, he could see the sleep in the corners of her eyes, the way her clothes had been carefully mended with mismatched thread. Someone, probably her mother, had braided her hair with love and attention, even though they couldn't afford shoes for her feet. She shifted Marcus to one arm and reached into her pocket with the other, pulling out that crumpled dollar bill. "You can use mine," she whispered. The words hung in the air like suspended animation. A child. An 8-year-old child who had come to the store with exactly $1 to buy milk for her baby brother. Who had discovered she didn't have enough money. Who was facing the same crushing reality of insufficient funds. And she was offering her only dollar to a stranger. The crowd went dead silent. Even the store's background music seemed to pause. David's voice came out as a croak. "I can't take your money." "It's okay," Amara said with the matter-of-fact wisdom that only children possess. "Mom says when people are hurting, we help. Even if we don't have much." She held out the dollar bill. It was wrinkled and soft from being folded and unfolded countless times. There was a small tear on one corner where Marcus had grabbed it earlier. $1. Her only dollar. The difference between her baby brother eating tonight or going hungry. And she was giving it away. David stared at the offered bill. Behind him, phones captured every moment. This would be on the internet in minutes. The billionaire and the little girl. The man who had everything and the child who had nothing. Except she wasn't the one with nothing. She was the one with everything that mattered. "Please," Amara said softly. "You look really sad." And that's when David Langston, CEO, billionaire, master of the universe, broke. David's knees almost buckled. 30 years of building an empire. 3 decades of crushing competitors and maximizing profits. A lifetime of believing that strength meant taking, power meant hoarding, and success meant standing on top while others scraped by below. And here was this child, this beautiful, pure-hearted child, teaching him what strength actually looked like. Tears blurred his vision. Real tears. The kind he hadn't shed since his own childhood, before he learned that emotion was weakness and vulnerability was dangerous. "I can't," he whispered, his voice breaking. "You need it for your brother." But Amara was already placing the dollar in his trembling hand, her small fingers warm against his palm. "Marcus will be okay," she said with quiet confidence. "We always figure something out." The crowd pressed closer. Dozens of phones recorded from every angle. This wasn't just a viral moment anymore, this was a mirror being held up to humanity itself. What did it mean when a child living in poverty showed more generosity than billionaires? What did it say about society when an 8-year-old demonstrated more wisdom than Wall Street executives? "This is unbelievable," someone whispered. "She's giving him her only dollar. That baby's gonna go hungry because some rich guy can't get his finances together." But David wasn't hearing the criticism anymore. He was lost in Amara's eyes, seeing something he'd forgotten existed, unconditional human kindness. No strings attached. No agenda. No expectation of return on investment. Just one person helping another because it was the right thing to do. The cashier watched in stunned silence. Other customers had stopped pretending to shop and were openly staring. A few had lowered their phones, suddenly feeling intrusive witnessing something so sacred. David looked at the dollar in his hand, worth nothing to him financially, but priceless in every way that mattered. "Thank you," he whispered. But he wasn't just thanking her for the money. He was thanking her for reminding him what it meant to be human. The videos hit social media before David and Amara even left the checkout line. At GenWatches 23, "Y'all, did I just witness a billionaire get saved by a little girl's dollar? I can't even, #faith #humanity. At Tech Bro Reacts, "This is either the most beautiful thing I've ever seen or the most depressing commentary on wealth inequality ever captured. Probably both. #Amara's dollar. At Mom Life Real, "I'm crying in my car watching this video. This baby girl gave her only dollar to help a stranger. Where did we go wrong as adults?" #Lessons from children. Within minutes, the #, Amara's dollar was trending. The video, shaky phone footage of a little black girl offering her crumpled dollar to a well-dressed white man, spread faster than wildfire. But the internet being the internet, reactions were complicated. This is what's wrong with America. Kids going hungry while billionaires play games. Plot twist. It's all staged for publicity. That little girl showed more character in 30 seconds than most people do in their entire lives. Why doesn't he just give her $1 million? He could change her whole family's life. She shouldn't have to be the adult in this situation. I don't care how rich you are. That baby just restored my faith in humanity. The debate raged across platforms. News outlets picked up the story. Talk show hosts discussed it. Politicians tried to use it for their own agendas. But none of them understood what actually happened in that Walmart checkout line. This wasn't about money. It wasn't about poverty or wealth inequality or systemic injustice, though it touched on all those things. This was about the exact moment when a billionaire's carefully constructed walls came crashing down, and a child's simple act of kindness reminded the world what love looks like in action. David paid for both their groceries. He walked Amara to her uncle's car. He asked for her mother's phone number. And his life was never the same. David couldn't sleep that night. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Amara's face. Heard her voice saying, "You look really sad." Felt the weight of her crumpled dollar bill in his palm. By 3 a.m., he was pacing his penthouse apartment, staring out at the city lights below. Somewhere out there, that little girl was probably sleeping on a couch or sharing a bed with her baby brother. Somewhere out there, a family was struggling with problems that David's pocket change could solve. For the first time in decades, his wealth felt like a burden instead of a trophy. He hired a private investigator. Not for corporate espionage or due diligence, for finding one 8-year-old girl in a city of 8 million people. "Sir," the investigator called 12 hours later. "I found her." The address led David to a neighborhood he'd driven past countless times but never really seen. Broken streetlights. Cracked sidewalks. Buildings that looked tired from holding up against too many hard years. He knocked on apartment 4B with hands that shook worse than they had at the checkout line. The door opened to reveal a woman in her 30s, thin from worry and late-night shifts. She had Amara's eyes, kind, but guarded. "Ms. Johnson. I'm David Langston. I met your daughter yesterday at. I know who you are." Her voice was careful, protective. "Half the internet is talking about what she did. Could I speak with you? Please." She studied his face for a long moment, then stepped aside. The apartment was smaller than David's walk-in closet. But it was clean. Loved. Amara's drawings covered the refrigerator. Marcus's toys were neatly arranged in a corner. Everything had its place, even though there wasn't much of everything. "She's at school," Ms. Johnson said, following his gaze. "Marcus is at my sister's. They don't need to see whatever this is about." David sat on a couch held together with duct tape and prayers. "I want to help," he said simply. "We don't need charity," she replied, just as simply. "I know. But I think I need Amara." "You want to know about my daughter?" Lisa Johnson asked, settling into the chair across from David. "She's been taking care of me since she was 6. Lisa's story unfolded like a map of every systemic failure David had spent his career ignoring. Her husband Marcus Sr., deployed overseas, killed by an IED when baby Marcus was 3 months old. No life insurance because military bureaucracy moved slower than grief. Lisa. Working 3 jobs, cleaning offices at night, stocking shelves at dawn, watching other people's children in the afternoon, just to keep their heads barely above water. Amara learned to change diapers because I was too exhausted to wake up when Marcus cried, Lisa continued, her voice steady but her hands shaking slightly. She learned to stretch $1 because sometimes that's all we had for food. David thought about his own childhood, private schools, nannies, summer camps that cost more than most people earned in a year. "The pneumonia started 3 weeks ago," Lisa went on. "Doctor says I need surgery. Says without it, I might not." She trailed off, glancing at family photos on the wall. "Insurance won't cover it. They say it's not life-threatening enough." "How much?" David asked. "We don't want your money, Mr. Langston." "That's not what I asked." Lisa studied his face. Something in his expression must have convinced her he wasn't offering charity, he was asking for facts. $43,000, she whispered. Might as well be 43 million. David thought about his watch, worth twice that much. His car, worth 20 times that much. The wine in his cellar that he'd never even opened. "Amara doesn't know," Lisa continued. She thinks Mom just has a bad cough. She brings me tea she makes with hot tap water and tells me stories to make me feel better. The picture became clearer. An 8-year-old girl taking care of a dying mother and baby brother. Offering her last dollar to a stranger because that's what heroes do, they give even when they have nothing left to give. She asked me yesterday if God makes mistakes, Lisa said softly. Because she can't understand why good people suffer while mean people get everything they want. David felt something break inside his chest. What did you tell her? I told her that sometimes angels come disguised as regular people. And sometimes they come to teach us lessons we didn't know we needed to learn. 3 days later, Lisa Johnson woke up in a private room at Presbyterian Hospital. The surgery had been scheduled immediately. The best pulmonary specialist in the state. Private room. Full recovery care. Everything paid for by an anonymous donor. But Lisa knew. David sat beside her bed, reading "Goodnight Moon" to Marcus, who was fascinated by this strange man with gentle hands and a voice that sounded like Daddy's bedtime stories. "Where's Amara?" Lisa asked, her voice hoarse from the breathing tube. "School," David replied, not looking up from the book. "I promised her you'd be here when she got back. You don't have to do this." David finally looked at her. His eyes were different than they'd been in her apartment. Softer. More present. "3 days ago, your daughter gave me her only dollar," he said quietly. "Not because she had to. Not because someone was watching. Because she saw someone in pain and decided to help." He closed the children's book and leaned back in his chair. "I've spent 30 years building an empire," he continued. "I've made billions of dollars. I've been on magazine covers and given speeches about success and achievement. And I thought that made me powerful." Lisa waited, sensing he needed to say this. "But I've never, not once, done what Amara did. I've never given away something I needed because someone else needed it more. I've never looked at a stranger's pain and decided it was my responsibility to help." Marcus babbled happily from David's lap, grabbing at his expensive tie with sticky fingers. "She didn't just give me her dollar, Lisa. She gave me back my soul." Through the window, they could see the city skyline. David's corporate headquarters rose like a steel monument to ambition and achievement. "The surgery is just money," David said. "What your daughter gave me is priceless." Lisa felt tears sliding down her cheeks, not from pain, but from relief. For the first time in years, she could breathe properly. And for the first time since Marcus Sr. died, she felt like maybe, just maybe, they were going to be okay. "Thank you," she whispered. But David was already shaking his head. "Thank you," he replied. "For raising an angel." The camera flashes felt different this time. David had given hundreds of press conferences over the years. Product launches, merger announcements, quarterly earnings reports. He'd mastered the art of corporate speak, saying everything while revealing nothing. But standing at the podium now, with Amara and her family sitting in the front row, he threw away the script. "I want to tell you about the most important business lesson I've ever learned," he began. "I learned it from an 8-year-old girl in a Walmart checkout line." The reporters leaned forward, pens poised. This wasn't the typical David Langston press conference. "For 30 years, I believed that success meant accumulation. That power meant taking. That winning meant someone else had to lose." He paused, looking directly at Amara, who was holding Marcus and whispering quietly to keep him calm. "Last week, a little girl proved me wrong. She had $1, literally her only dollar, and she gave it to me because I looked sad." Murmurs rippled through the audience. This story had already made headlines, but hearing it from David himself was different. "She didn't know I was wealthy. She didn't know giving me that dollar meant her baby brother might go hungry. She just saw someone in pain and decided to help." David's voice caught slightly. "That's real power. That's true success. That's what winning actually looks like. A reporter raised her hand. Mr. Langston, critics are saying this is just a publicity stunt to distract from your FBI investigation. Let me stop you right there, David interrupted. This isn't about my reputation. This isn't about my business. This is about a child who taught me that the richest person in any room isn't the one with the most money, it's the one with the biggest heart. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a crumpled dollar bill. Amara's dollar. He'd kept it in his pocket every day since the checkout line. I'm starting a foundation, he announced. The Amara Johnson Foundation for Children in Need. We're beginning with a $50 million endowment. The room erupted in questions, but David only had eyes for Amara. She was smiling at him, not because of the money or the foundation or the attention. She was smiling because he looked happy instead of sad. And for David Langston, that was worth more than all the billions he'd ever earned. The video had 20 million views within a week. But something unexpected was happening in the comments section. Instead of the usual internet toxicity, people were sharing their own stories. This reminded me to check on my elderly neighbor. Turns out she'd been without groceries for 3 days because her son forgot to visit. Fixed that real quick. My daughter wanted to buy toys with her allowance. After watching this, she decided to donate it to the local food bank instead. 8 years old and already wiser than me. I've been complaining about my job for months. Today I realized I make more in a week than this little girl's family probably sees in a year. Time to stop whining and start being grateful. Hashtag Amara's dollar became more than a trending hashtag, it became a movement. Restaurants started leaving free meals for families in need. Coffee shops put up pay it forward boards. Elementary schools organized coin drives led by children who wanted to be like Amara. But the most profound changes were happening in places cameras couldn't capture. At Langston Industries, David implemented new policies, living wages for all employees, paid family leave, on-site childcare. He sold his third vacation home to fund college scholarships for employees' children. His board members were furious. His shareholders were confused. His accountants predicted financial disaster. David didn't care. Sir, his CFO protested during a heated board meeting, these changes will cost us millions in profit. Good, David replied. Let's see if we can make it billions. But the real transformation was personal. David had Amara's family over for dinner every Sunday. He learned Marcus's favorite songs. He helped Amara with her math homework. He listened to Lisa's dreams of becoming a nurse once her health improved. For the first time in decades, David's calendar included entries that had nothing to do with making money. Tuesday, Amara's school play. Thursday, Marcus's pediatrician appointment. Saturday, family game night. His assistant had been confused. Sir, should I mark these as business meetings? No, David had smiled. Mark them as life meetings. Because Amara hadn't just given him $1. She'd given him back his humanity. Not everyone was buying David's transformation. Billionaire plays hero after getting caught with frozen assets, Wall Street Journal headline. David Langston's charity campaign, genuine change or damage control. Forbes cover story. The Amara effect, how one video became a PR masterclass, Business Insider analysis. Social media was split down the middle. Half the internet celebrated the story as proof that humans were capable of change. The other half dissected every moment, looking for evidence of manipulation. He's using that poor child for publicity. Nobody changes that fast. It's all calculated. Rich people don't suddenly grow hearts. They grow strategies. The criticism stung, but David understood it. If he'd seen this story 6 months ago, he would have been equally cynical. But Amara wasn't reading the headlines. She was living her life. Going to school, taking care of Marcus, helping her mother recover from surgery. When a reporter ambushed her outside her elementary school, asking if she thought David was really changed or just pretending, Amara had looked genuinely confused. Why would someone pretend to be nice, she'd asked. Being mean takes more energy than being good. The 8-year-old's logic left the reporter speechless. That night, David called Lisa. I know what people are saying. If this is hurting Amara or your family. David, Lisa interrupted. Can I ask you something? Of course. When you're with us, when you're reading to Marcus or helping Amara with homework or just sitting at our kitchen table, are you thinking about cameras or headlines or what people will say? David considered the question honestly. No. I'm thinking about how Marcus laughs when I make funny voices. Or how proud Amara looks when she solves a hard math problem. Or how nice it feels to be part of something real. Then that's all that matters, Lisa said softly. The people who love you will believe in your heart. The people who don't, well, their opinion was never going to change anyway. David smiled, looking at Amara's dollar bill on his desk. Some things were worth more than good publicity. Some things were worth everything. The Amara Johnson Foundation had grown beyond David's wildest expectations. What started as a $50 million endowment had attracted donations from around the world. Teachers sent $10 bills from their classrooms. Children mailed allowance money in hand-decorated envelopes. Corporations pledged matching funds. But the real success wasn't measured in dollars, it was measured in lives changed. Single mothers received emergency rent assistance. Children got medical care their families couldn't afford. Students earned scholarships to colleges they'd only dreamed of attending. And at the center of it all was Amara, who had no idea she'd started a revolution with one crumpled dollar bill. She was still just a 9-year-old girl, she'd had a birthday, David never missed those now, who loved her baby brother, helped her mother, and tried to be kind to everyone she met. Mr. David, she said one Sunday evening as they finished dinner at his penthouse, why do people keep calling me special? I just gave you my dollar because you looked sad. David smiled, watching Marcus toddle around the living room, babbling happily. The baby was walking now, healthy and strong thanks to proper nutrition and medical care. That's exactly why you're special, Amara. You think kindness is normal. You think helping people is what everyone does. Isn't it? She asked, genuinely puzzled. Lisa laughed from the kitchen where she was finishing the dishes, something she insisted on doing despite David's protests that he had staff for that. In a perfect world, baby girl, Lisa called out. In a perfect world. Then let's make the world perfect, Amara said with the confidence that only children possess. It can't be that hard, right? David felt tears prick his eyes. This child, this beautiful, innocent child, still believed the world could be fixed. Still believed people were fundamentally good. Still believed one person could make a difference. And maybe she was right. You know what, Amara? David said, kneeling down to her level. Let's try. 1 year later, they returned to the same Walmart. Not for publicity, David had learned to hate cameras. Not for a photo op, those felt fake now. Just because Amara had asked to go back to where it all started. The store looked exactly the same. Same fluorescent lights. Same checkout lanes. Same background music playing overhead. But everything else was different. The cashier recognized them immediately. Oh my goodness. You're the little girl from the video. Amara blushed, still not comfortable with attention. We just need some milk, she said softly. But word spread quickly through the store. Employees appeared from various departments. Customers pulled out phones, not to mock or shame this time, but to capture something beautiful. That video changed my life, a teenage employee told Amara. I started volunteering at a homeless shelter because of what you did. My kids watch that video every time they're fighting, added a mother. Reminds them what really matters. I keep a dollar bill in my wallet, said an elderly man. Just in case someone needs it more than me. David watched Amara handle the attention with grace beyond her years. She thanked everyone politely but kept redirecting the conversation away from herself. The important thing isn't what I did, she told a local news reporter who'd somehow gotten wind of their visit. The important thing is what we can all do. Every day. For each other. When they finally reached the checkout line, the same lane where it all began, Amara placed a single carton of milk on the conveyor belt. The cashier smiled. This one's on the house, sweetheart. But Amara shook her head, pulling out a crisp dollar bill. Thank you, but I want to pay. Mom says when we can afford to take care of ourselves, we should. That way there's more help for people who really need it. She handed over the dollar with the same gentle dignity she'd shown a year ago. Some things never change. The best things never should. David's phone rang at 2 a.m. He'd learned to answer late-night calls immediately. Since becoming close to Amara's family, emergency calls meant something was wrong with Lisa's health or Marcus had a fever. But the voice on the other end wasn't Lisa's. Mr. Langston. This is Dr. Sarah Chen from Children's Hospital. I have a 9-year-old patient here who's been asking for the nice man from the dollar video for 3 hours straight. David sat up in bed. I'm sorry, what? Her name is Maya Rodriguez. She's been battling leukemia for 2 years. Tonight we think she's dying, sir. And she keeps saying she wants to meet the man who learned how to be good from a little girl. David was already reaching for his clothes. I'll be right there. The hospital at 2 a.m. was a different world, quieter, more solemn, filled with the kind of hope that only emerges in the darkest hours. Maya was tiny, her head covered with a colorful scarf instead of hair. But her eyes were bright and alert when David entered her room. You came, she whispered, her voice paper-thin but filled with joy. Of course I came. David sat beside her bed, taking her small hand in his. What can I do for you, sweetheart? Maya's parents watched from the corner, tears streaming down their faces. I want to give someone my dollar, Maya said. Like Amara did. But I don't know who needs it most. She reached under her pillow and pulled out a dollar bill, worn soft from handling, decorated with crayon drawings of flowers and hearts. I've been saving it, she continued. Waiting for the right person. Someone who looks really sad. David's throat closed. Maya, you don't have to. But I want to, she interrupted with the same quiet determination he'd heard in another little girl's voice a year ago. Will you help me find someone who needs it? And David realized that Amara hadn't just changed his life. She'd started a revolution of kindness that was spreading, $1 at a time. By dawn, David had helped Maya give away her dollar to a janitor whose car had broken down and who didn't have money for the bus home. The man had cried. Not just from gratitude, but from the pure shock of a dying child thinking about his problems instead of her own. Maya passed away that afternoon, holding her parents' hands and smiling because she'd gotten to be like Amara. Someone who gave when she had every reason to keep. Her story spread just as fast as Amara's had. Hashtag Maya's Dollar joined hashtag Amara's Dollar across social media. But this time, something bigger was happening. People weren't just sharing the videos, they were sharing dollars. Coffee shop tip jars started filling with dollar bills marked, for someone who needs it more. Schools organized dollar days, where kids brought single bills to help classmates buy lunch. Restaurants kept jars of customer-donated dollars to help families who couldn't afford meals. The movement had evolved beyond charity into something deeper, a reminder that everyone had something to give, even if it was only $1. Even if it was only kindness. Amara watched the news coverage from her living room, Marcus playing with blocks at her feet. She was 10 now, taller and more articulate, but still possessed of that same gentle wisdom that had captivated the world. It's getting big, she observed to David, who was helping Marcus stack his blocks into towers. Too big? David asked, concerned. He'd seen how fame could corrupt even the purest intentions. Amara considered this seriously. No. Not too big. But. People keep acting like I did something special. But all I did was what Mum taught me. What everyone's parents should teach them. She looked at David with those same piercing eyes that had seen through his wealth and status to his pain. Maybe the special thing isn't giving someone your dollar, she said thoughtfully. Maybe the special thing is remembering that everyone deserves to have someone care about them. Marcus's tower fell over, and he clapped his hands in delight. Simple joy. Simple truth. Simple love. The most revolutionary forces in the world had always been simple. 2 years after that first checkout line encounter, David found himself in a place he'd never expected, testifying before Congress. Not about corporate malfeasance or antitrust violations, but about child poverty in America. Senators, David began, adjusting the microphone, I'm here today not as a businessman or a billionaire, but as someone who was educated by an 8-year-old girl. The hearing room was packed. C-SPAN cameras rolled. But David's attention was focused on the gallery, where Amara sat with her mother, wearing a dress David had bought for her birthday. She gave him a small wave and a thumbs up. 2 years ago, I thought I understood economics, David continued. I thought wealth creation was about maximizing shareholder value and minimizing costs. I was wrong. He pulled out a familiar dollar bill, Amara's dollar, now laminated and carried in his wallet like a talisman. Real economics isn't about profit margins. It's about human dignity. It's about understanding that a society is only as strong as its most vulnerable members. Senator Williams leaned forward. Mr. Langston, what specific policy changes are you recommending? Universal child nutrition programs. Healthcare that doesn't bankrupt families. Housing assistance that keeps children in stable homes. Education funding that doesn't depend on zip codes. These programs would cost billions, another senator observed. Yes, David agreed. They'd cost billions. You know what costs more? Allowing children to grow up in poverty. Allowing families to choose between food and medicine. Allowing a generation of kids to believe the world doesn't care about them. He looked directly at the camera, knowing millions were watching. I used to think giving away money made me poorer. But a little girl taught me that keeping money makes you poor in every way that matters. The hearing room was silent. Amara Johnson gave me her only dollar because I looked sad, David concluded. I'm asking you to give American children what they need because they deserve to look happy. Later, in the hallway outside the hearing room, a reporter asked Amara what she thought of David's testimony. He finally learned how to use his big words for good things, she said simply. And that, everyone agreed, was the most profound political analysis they'd heard all day. 5 years later, Amara Johnson graduated valedictorian from her high school. David sat in the front row of the auditorium, wearing the same tie Marcus had grabbed as a baby. Now a successful 5-year-old who could read chapter books and had inherited his sister's generous heart. Lisa sat beside David, healthy and strong, halfway through nursing school on a scholarship David had quietly arranged. Our valedictorian, the principal announced, will be attending Harvard University this fall on a full academic scholarship. The applause was thunderous, but David heard none of it. He was too busy fighting back tears as Amara, now 17, poised, brilliant, stepped to the podium. She looked exactly the same as she had in that checkout line years ago. Still kind. Still wise. Still seeing the world as a place where people helped each other. 5 years ago, Amara began, her voice carrying clearly through the auditorium, I learned that sometimes the smallest actions can change everything. David smiled, remembering. I was 8 years old, holding my baby brother, trying to buy milk with my only dollar. A man in front of me was struggling too. His credit card wasn't working. He looked lost. The audience listened, rapt. Most of them knew this story, but hearing it from Amara herself was different. I gave him my dollar. Not because I was special. Not because I was trying to be a hero. Because he looked sad, and my mum taught me that when people are hurting, we help. She paused, finding David's eyes in the crowd. That man turned out to be David Langston. But more importantly, he turned out to be my friend. My family. Someone who learned the same lesson I was trying to teach: we're all connected. We all matter. We all deserve kindness. The applause began again, but Amara wasn't finished. I'm going to Harvard to study social work, she announced. Because I want to spend my life helping kids who are standing in checkout lines with their only dollar, wondering if the world cares about them. She held up a dollar bill, the same one, now framed, that had started it all. The answer is yes. The world cares. Because the world is full of people who remember what it feels like to look sad, and who choose to help anyway. David stood and applauded until his hands hurt. His daughter, not by blood, but by love, was going to change the world. David looked around at the laughter echoing from the playground he'd built with his own hands. Amara tugged on his sleeve. David, do you still miss being famous for money? He knelt down to her level. You know what, Amara? I was never really famous for money. I was just visible. There's a difference. What's the difference? Being visible means people see your name, your face, your stuff. Being remembered means they see your heart. Amara smiled, watching children play safely on equipment David had restored. She's got you thinking deep thoughts. She's got me thinking about what actually matters. David's story isn't unique because he was wealthy. It's powerful because he learned something we all need to remember. Your worth isn't measured by what's in your wallet, but by what's in your heart when someone needs help. Think about your last week. When someone was struggling in line behind you, did you notice? When a coworker seemed overwhelmed, did you offer to help? When a neighbor looked lonely, did you wave? Amara saw David not as a billionaire or a failure, but as a human being who needed kindness. She didn't calculate whether he deserved help. She just helped. Here's what you can do starting today. Look up from your phone when you're in public. Really see the people around you. Carry cash, not for yourself, but for moments when someone needs it more. Ask, how can I help, instead of walking past struggles. Remember, the smallest act of kindness can redirect someone's entire story. David thought he lost everything when his card was declined. Instead, he found what he'd been searching for his whole life: purpose beyond profit, connection beyond credit scores. Your turn. This week, be someone's Amara. Notice who needs help. Offer what you can, whether it's money, time, or just acknowledgement that they matter. Because here's the truth the internet won't tell you: going viral for kindness feels better than going viral for anything else. If this story made you think differently about the people around you, hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you're still not subscribing, drop a comment. What's holding you back? Maybe you think these stories are too good to be true, or maybe you're worried about filling your feed with feel-good fluff. I get it. But consider this: what if spending a few minutes a week remembering our shared humanity actually makes you better at being human? Subscribe for stories that remind you why kindness isn't weakness, it's strength in action. Your story is still being written. Make sure when people remember you, they remember your heart, not just your headlines.